Since the dawn of time, mankind has discovered and learned about technical marvels, evolutionary achievements, and the glory of victory. For 33 years, the world of the emblematic universe drifted into new territories: dragon slaying, oppressive racism, time travel paradox, and pop idol groups. We do not talk about that era. But still, there lies many questions in that world that inhabits Arcadia and beyond, like if these worlds are truly interconnected through time and space, the wonders of the mysticism and magic, and how they conflict with the science arts. But most importantly,
what kind of conditioner did this bitch use?
I'll think about it.
Fire Emblem Engage, the 14th installment of the Fire Emblem series. I hate to break it to you guys, I didn't play the entirety of Fire Emblem 1 through 13 to understand the story of 14. That's a joke, I did play the majority of the series. In fact, my first ever Game Boy Advance games was Fire Emblem the Blazing Sword, also known as just Fire Emblem, because this was the first one we got here in America. And then I followed through every series going onwards: Path of Radiance, the Shadow Dragon remake, Awakening, Fates, and Three Houses. So it's safe to say that most of you would classify me as a Fire Emblem fan. Others would label me as horny.
Well, have you seen Ike when he's all grown up? Just look at those pecs.
Fire Emblem as a whole is a tactical-based RPG with permadeath. Every character is crafted to have personality and balance for the gameplay mechanics such as class and stats. This is the gist of what makes Fire Emblem a Fire Emblem game. Modern Fire Emblem games usually take out the permadeath and provide them as a separate difficulty option. Some games limit permadeath to a per-chapter basis, but that's what the creative process of what a Fire Emblem game is: permadeath and anime titties.
So here we have with present day Fire Emblem Engage. I've already been convinced enough because it's a Fire Emblem game, so I didn't really need any trailers to convince me otherwise.
Well, it was even hard to avoid the news about it anyways, just from word of mouth. What is this? Old Fire Emblem units as stands/personas for our current cast? What could this mean? How does this affect the story and gameplay? Wait a minute, Marth with red hair? He could be evil? Wait, you could be evil? Everything about this game was leading up to this being one of the best Fire Emblem games. And I'll tell you this, I got more excited for Engage than I did with Three Houses. Look, Three Houses was a fun game, but it had no hype whatsoever for me. Process of teaching your students and dating them? Ugh. Call me a prude, but that didn't really suit me. Then the time skip happened and it was suddenly less awkward. In my mind, Engage got better marketing and an intriguing mechanic that makes me want to play the game. So what are we waiting for? Let's pop this in and play the most anticipated game this year. This is Fire Emblem Engage.
Well, that wasn't worth the $60.
So, you start off in the middle of the final battle, and I have to specify a final battle, not the final battle. Whether or not it's actually a final battle remains to be seen, though judging from the party members fighting our side, I sense a repeat of Awakening. After beating your tutorial fight, you faint into a deep slumber that incapacitates you for 1,000 years. Either that or the tutorial fight was just a dream sequence. Pick your poison. When you wake up, you are greeted by two twins, Fram and Clan, alongside our paladin for the game, Vander, who you'll use early on in the game and never afterwards unless you're a huge paladin fan. Now that we've awakened, we journey to our castle only to be invaded by the undead creature known as the Corrupted, only to be saved by a dragon who turns out to be our mom.
Oh, nice! A parent in a Fire Emblem game. I hope she doesn't die.
We get our greetings in a mock battle, which our mom is relentless at. Mommy, I just woke up. Why are you hurting me?
Welcome to the real world. You're gonna learn. This is the real world. You learned it early, son.
And then we get raided by enemy soldiers. Well, I'm sure with our training earlier, we are absolutely ready to defend our home turf.
It's only been 3 chapters!
So our mom dies. What a shocker. During the confrontation, one of our border allies came to help us. Oh yeah, so there's a total of 5 nations in total. With the awakening of the Divine Dragon, also awakens the Fell Dragon, whose goal is to take over the world and can be achieved by gathering 12 emblem rings. Each nation has a total of 2 rings, one to keep safe in their own palace and one hidden so no one outside of said nation can access it. Don't know where the last remaining 2 rings are, don't worry about the small details.
So, in summary, collect 12 Dragon Balls, stop Armageddon. Sounds like an adventure to me.
The ring consists of past Fire Emblem warriors from 12 past Fire Emblem games. Yes, there were 13 previous entries, but because Marth showed up in 2 of them, he's the sole representation for both Shadow Dragon and Mystery of the Emblem. The other 12 are represented by their own retrospective games. Even Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, who have the same characters, have 2 separate characters representing their games, although I am confused why they chose Ike's Radiant Dawn model when he's supposed to represent Path of Radiance. I mean, I'm not complaining, cause have you seen Radiant Dawn, Ike? You can grind meat on those scrumptious abs. There's not really a set order where you get the rings. They don't reappear in chronological order, which gave me a huge whiplash. Like, you get Marth, and then Sigurd, and then Silica, which makes sense. Those 3 represent the first 3 Fire Emblem games. And then you suddenly jump to Micaiah, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa there, Intelligent Systems. I think you missed a couple of games there. For characters that have multiple genders, they have Lucina represent Awakening, female Corrin representing Fates, and male Byleth representing 3 houses. And strangely enough, both Erica and Ephraim representing Sacred Stones. Now, to be fair, the default is Erica, so most likely or not, she's supposed to be the representation for Sacred Stones. But since it's both of them that get the spotlight sharing the same ring, I'd like to think that Sacred Stones represents a 2-in-1 combo. Besides, if you want to consider Erica as the sole representation, she's the character you get at the start of your party. And I don't see Eliwood or Hector sharing the same slot as her game. This couldn't be any more perfect. I personally like male Robin more, so having Lucina represent Awakening is a bit disappointing. But Lucina is a fine enough character that I don't mind her inclusion, and personally speaking, I've always liked the design of female Corrin and male Byleth more than their opposite gender counterparts, so those inclusions are perfect for me. Unfortunately for our protagonists, we're not the only ones who wield the power of previous Fire Emblem personas, as even the bad guys have their own selection of stands that they too can summon, and even worse, in the wrong hands, they too can unleash demonic powers that turns them into gingers. Roy and Silica are already redheads, though. I don't think that's going to change much.
And that is the gist of the story. The rings are mandatory in order for the big bad to take over the world, but it's also needed for us to defeat the big bad at the same time.
You go from world to world, traveling to all corners of the map, meeting their retainers, their kings and queens, all the while muttering,
"Oh, nice! A character in a Fire Emblem game. I hope he doesn't die."
because the story is that predictable. It's a Fire Emblem game. I know that the ending will relatively be the same because every other Fire Emblem game has been relatively the same. Grow your army, prepare for war, kill the big bad evil dragon dude at the end of the game. It's the journey that makes it a different experience and how our main protagonist struggles and overcomes their journey. And if we were talking about the journey itself, it is kind of slow. Sure, some funny moments occur during our journey, but nothing really ramps up the tension until the halfway mark, around 9 hours into the game. There are some enemy units that do become your allies as the game progresses, and I think that adds a nice dynamic to the group, but in the overall scheme of things, for being at war with each other, they seem to completely absolve all of their issues now that an even bigger threat is looming at their doorsteps. It's not all depressing or tragic though, as the game does manage to sprinkle in some comedic elements, not just from the social links, but from the main missions as well, like when Alcrest straight up does a Yakuza humble apology stance.
My partners and shareholders, please accept my most humble apology!
Or despite how every ring gets the honor of being stored in an enriching locale such as a hidden temple with Corrin, or the Well of Knowledge with Silica. I get to do that drawer.
I haven't seen it for a while. Fogado, do you know where the ring might be?
No clue. Maybe it's in the doodad drawer?
Please, wait here a moment.
Oh! Okay.
The doodad drawer.
Has it been lying around in a musty cupboard this whole time?
This is one of the strongest emblem rings. I don't know what to say.
The story does a fine enough job introducing each nation's ruler, their children, and their retainers, and some of the characters range from some of the most adorable members that most of the time stay in my party to, oh, you exist. Fire Emblem is definitely a lot more quantity than quality. Not every character is gonna land the mark. Some people may like the more serious type characters like Lapis or Zelkov. Some may like the cutesy Yunaka or Rosado. Some just like big titty bitches. And some like BBC, look, I ain't gonna judge. Every character is designed to cater towards a niche audience, and most likely or not, those are the types of characters that you'll most likely play throughout the entirety of the game. For the most part, you'll have a minimum of 8 members, counting Colgate, and a maximum of 12 characters. There is just no feasible way of grinding everyone in your party member without a copious amount of skirmish battles and online modes. Let's get onto the gameplay themselves while we're at it. Fire Emblem as a whole is a tactical-based RPG with permadeath. Every character is crafted to have personality and balance for the gameplay mechanics such as class and stats. That's the gist of what makes a Fire Emblem game a Fire Emblem game. And if it sounded like I copy and pasted what I said, that's because that's exactly what I did. If you're familiar with the Fire Emblem formula, then everything should be familiar territory. Weapon triangles still exist with the bonus of breaking the users if they get attacked by their proper weaknesses. You get bonus experience for killing your enemies, and you need to position your party members appropriately in order to balance out your levels. Or if you're patient and cunning enough, find exploits for infinite grinding. No, don't worry, villager, you got this. Just keep up the damage and you'll be fine. We got heals for days. There are ways to grind for more experience, though. You're not just limited to the main missions or paralogs. We got skirmishes that will randomly show up through the map, online battles which range from additional skirmishes, or actual battles from real-life opponents. Except no, it's not, because these actions that my opponents are doing are clearly AI-driven. There is no way I can believe that an online battle runs this smoothly with all my opponents taking their actions immediately after I finished my turn. The game doesn't even have a ranked match, so there's no way I'm fighting a legitimate person from Japan at a time zone where they could be asleep at this hour. Still, it's an option for grinding, and online battles are the one time where permadeath is guaranteed to be disabled. On another note, permadeath! You get to toggle them off and on in the start of the game, but if you want to disable them or change the difficulty, you can only turn it to casual or lower difficulties. But for the sake of transparency, I started the game on hard mode classic, and throughout my game, I didn't have any members in my party die once.
I couldn't defend.
Yeah, at least without a lot of resets. The time crystal mechanic makes a return from 3 houses. I'm not gonna lie, I abused the crap out of this and I have no shame in doing so. You wanna know how I play Fire Emblem before going through an Iron Man playthrough? Resetting the chapter and doing everything all over again. I was a patient kid. Think of this rewind mechanic as a quality of life improvement for those who like save states. Just rewind back to the action before you died and figure out a different pathway through your objective. This mechanic saves so much time in resetting that I'm glad it makes a return. And if you're complaining about how this makes the game way too easy, you know you could just not use it, right? This isn't a forced mechanic by any means. Unlike the recent Pokemon games, it's completely optional unless you use up that 10 rewinds because you're that bad of a player. Okay, I had to reset a chapter once because I've rewinded way too many times. I'm a bad player, sue me. There are also arena battles, which unfortunately got a significant nerf. The arena battle challenges were introduced in Fire Emblem 3 Houses as well, and it looks like Engage still kept the same formula. You have 3 battles for each mission. I personally would have liked if they worked it like the previous games, where arena battles can be seen in the overworld and you can risk your money in an attempt to get more money and experience. Or even better, have the arena battle we currently have, but make it so that we either get 1 try per character to balance out the team, or better yet, an infinite amount of tries, but it gets harder as we attempt the arena with the same ally. And just to make sure the infinite tries isn't too broken, add permadeath to the arenas as well. You don't die in the current arena battle since you're fighting your allies, and it's a mere training exercise. But in my version that I envision, let's bring back the random opponents that could potentially kill you. By the way, these arena battles are animated beautifully. It's almost as if we're playing a Fire Emblem fighting game.
You do need that edge guard, and I think you should take me seriously, because look at the scoreboard right now.
Yeah, I got numbers on the...
Yo, did he just walk up slowly and down smash?
He did.
Seriously though, that sounds like an amazing idea. Dibs on maining Lin. It's all in your abilities to strategize on what party member you want to deploy and who to bench. Most of my playthrough I had these characters on my team, but the game is generous enough with grinding for skirmishes battles, arena battles, and online interactivity that if you feel the need to do so, you can if you want. That still ain't gonna stop the bullshit where even if your hit percentage is higher or your opponent's hit percentage is lower, it's still RNG at the end of the day where things happen when you least expect them. And that crap stings, especially when you miss a 90% hit rate back to back, Alchrist! There are loads to do for the Somnio, for better or for worse. And I'd say that because there's actually a lot of content that you can do to get more materials, or give you or your party members some buffs and social links, but Jesus, doing this at the end of every chapter can drag on if you're not patient enough. It's the same routine of cooking, doing arena battles, working out, gathering materials. It's a chore, and I'm pretty sure half of my gameplay footage is just confined in this area. You don't need to do this technically. It's still possible to go through the overworld without the buffs and perks, but you are leaving yourself with a more challenging experience if you decide to do so. The changes and new mechanics shouldn't throw you off too much. You get an engage system where you can bond with previous Fire Emblem heroes, and the characters you play as grant attributes, special moves, and weapons from that hero you're equipped with. You start off with Marth, so naturally anyone with a sword will gain the benefits of said hero. However, units that don't normally wield a sword can also wield the weapon that he uses as well. That's the most interesting aspect to the engagement system. Anyone in your party member can equip these special rings and gain those attributes and bonds with those units.
This is some strange polygamy going on here. What the hell, Marth? What is Kata gonna think now that you're engaged to Toothpaste-chan over here? Oh my god, I just realized this game is called Engage for a reason.
Paralogs in this game serve as a neat nod to previous Fire Emblem games by replicating their maps and level designs from said game. I swear, the first time I saw these and got introduced by the likes of Blazing Sword's fantastical musical score or Path of Radiance Castle Siege, I was a happy fanboy. And then I obliterate the castle in one strike. Holy f***, this guy's scary! These paralogs are also a means to A-rank your bond points with your engagement characters, and as a fan of the Fire Emblem series, I managed to beat every single paralog. Except Leaf, because fuck this chapter! These ballistas are the worst, and they're being defended by these mage units that completely slow you down. Every time I get even within their range, they just one-shot me up! This level. Relationships and social links makes a return from previous Fire Emblem games known as supports. And on top of giving you buffs on the battlefield, these are also a means to unlock special cutscenes of the two characters you wish to interact. Not all characters can interact or support each other, unfortunately. They're limited to whatever intelligence systems restrict you with, but the ones that you can interact with, I'm not a big fan of them. There are some pretty wholesome or comedic or causes tension between the two in order to set up for a resolution for the A-rank cutscenes, but for the most part, everything seems kinda boring. Ah, you did a good job on the battlefield. Ah, thanks, you too. You wanna go spar? Sure. Repeat for 6 interactions. Another thing to note is that S-ranking allies with other allies are non-existent. They somewhat remove that for 3 houses where only the main character can romance their significant other, and you get some brief text of automated S-ranks at the end of the game. I would have liked it if they took the Awakening route where you're allowed to pair up anyone with selective units, or even better, with anyone you desire. But I'd also imagine having that freedom of content may lead to either twincest or underage romances, and that might be a problem with our legal jurisdiction. Then again, Colgate here is a 1,000-year-old dragon, so who's the real pedophile here? But I digress. Colgate is the only character that can truly romance another unit, regardless of gender. Everyone in this game is bisexual, and I love me some bisexual representation. But there's a catch. They don't reciprocate your feelings back.
Friendzone!
Okay, it's not all friend-zoned, as you do get special dialogue of clear or hinted romances for certain allies, but not every ally can be romanced. Despite being given the option to engage with them, this item called the Pact Ring is a completely platonic item that you give to your allies, just for an S-rank dialogue that may or may not be romanceable. Having reloaded my save file to capture these cutscenes, my first options for waifu and husband matches were Yunaka, because she's adorable, and Fogado, because he's hot! And at the end, both of them are not romance options. At least not definitively. There are hints or implications as the word partner can imply a romantic spouse, but at the same time, the word partner could also be business partners or companionship. There isn't really a clear distinction on who's romanceable or who's not, with the exception of a select few. I've noticed that Ivy and Goldmary are definitively romanceable female companions, while Louise is the same for the male side. But there are also characters where you give them the pack ring and don't give the impression of romance at all, or straight up refuse your advances, but still want to be friends. While some decisions are obvious while they aren't romance options, like whether or not the character is underage or overage, although I'm saying overage in a loose definition since, again, 1,000-year-old dragon. But overall, I found most of these cutscenes inconsistent, as who you get friend-zoned or not is decided by what the writers come up with. I'm glad that regardless of gender, everyone has a chance, but this half-assed platonic thing feels like a letdown, especially if your favorite character isn't a romance option. And it turns out it was because of poor localization!
What?
So, in the Japanese version of the game, everyone is a romance option.
I'm sorry. What?
So, we literally got gypped from our husbandos and waifus because for some reason the localization wanted platonic relationships, but only for a select few? I mean, I can understand for characters like Anna, who clearly is supposed to be a 12-year-old, don't get romance options because, well, she's f***ing 12. But why do characters like, say, Etienne not get a romance option, but Panette, who is a romance option, get the exception? These two look like they're relatively the same age, but one is a romance and the other is not. Oh, and don't get me started on this bullshit. Like, apparently you can romance Fram, but not Clan? Like, what? If we're seriously saying that this is an underage thing, then why the f*** is one twin romanceable, but not the other? Oh no, silly, that twin is underage. But this twin is perfectly legal. I don't think there's a pattern to who gets the romance treatment or not. It's just whatever the localization team feels like, and that is not only unfaithful to the original vision of the Japanese script, but it also made it worse by not giving everyone an equal opportunity to develop as a character.
That makes no f***ing sense. Either make everyone platonic or have the option to romance anyone. Except for maybe Anna. I'm really iffy on that idea. Let's not jump to that conclusion.
Alright, I need a palate cleanser from that rant. Let's talk about the graphics. If you're familiar with previous Fire Emblem games, this art style should be no different. Anime aesthetic is a common art style for these games, and if you want to compare them to previous Fire Emblem games, they went for a little bit more of a cartoony aspect in comparison to Three Houses, who in comparison is somewhat more realistic. They're not chibi-sized like the 3DS era Fire Emblem games, but the body models are still more lean and mean while the faces look like something out of a 4Kids show. I always find it funny when I go to the ring room when you're pulling for units in each character's banner. The older the art style, the more age it has got. Oh my god, Quan, what did they do to your face? That's not the exception for Marth's banner, who uses the Shadow Dragon remake PNGs instead. On the topic of these banners, the game has a gacha mechanic. It's not too broken, thankfully, and even more fortunately, there are no microtransactions. You can spend your bond fragments for a variety of ways, leveling up skills, inheriting skills, and ring crafting for augmentations or... strip.
Are we playing Fire Emblem or Honey Select?
But the most you're gonna use these bond fragments for is to pull for characters to give a slight stat bonus for the units who aren't equipped with the main character's engagement rings. These are harmless, and if you get any duplicates, you can upgrade these rings for a higher rarity, though getting S ranks is a huge asking price. I've noticed that the lip syncing for character animations is somewhat accurate. It's not perfect, but their mouth movements line up to the voice lines and their lip flaps. I think they had some sort of pre-generated lip sync engine, so the developers are relying on AI to generate the lip flaps, rather than hand animate them for the English dub. This works fine enough, and I'm sure not a lot of people will notice this anyways without me telling them. Unfortunately, the lip syncs do not match up to the pre-rendered cutscenes. They are still synced to the Japanese dub. Not gonna dock any points since honestly this is sort of standard for Japanese games getting localized. But it's still a little disappointing that they went through the effort of lip syncing in-game animations, but not pre-rendered ones. Onto the character rosters. I'm not gonna talk about everyone since your likes and dislikes will solely focus on your personal opinion. You're not fooling anyone, Lapis, you're just Sakura in disguise. But the main character, the main rulers of each country, and the antagonist are more than enough essential to the plot of the game. Well, not so much for all the main rulers. I think the prince and princesses of Brodia and Illusia are the ones that they focus on the most. I'll be brief with the rulers of Firene and Solm. They are the nations that kickstart your journey after a defeat. Examples include Firene kickstarting your journey after our mom died, and Solm kickstarting your journey after losing all of your engagement rings to the opponent. As units by themselves, I like them. They're nice, cute, sympathetic, and Fogado in particular, completely laid back, but as characters with motivations to the plot, they just sort of exist as an extension to our army. The main course of how the story progresses is the war between Brodia and Illusia, and the Four Hounds' inclusion to the story. I kinda benched Diamond, and I wish I didn't. He's an honorable soldier, and if I trained him, he probably would have been a formidable unit in my team. Though I think Ivy and her inclusion as Illusia's ruler brings a dynamic and complicated role to her development. And I don't mean complicated as conflicting to the plot by any means. I meant to say complicated as she's a good-natured soldier in her own right, but forced to take the helm as the bad guy due to her bloodline, which makes her a more dynamic character when she's confronted with joining us and leaving her country behind. Hortensia can kiss my ass. This is the one character out of all the rulers of each country that I did not enjoy. She's annoying when we first met her, and she kinda gets redeemed after we recruit her, but the initial experience left a sore taste in my mouth. The main bad guys, also called the Four Hounds, they are the main driving force for the conflict. Zephia, the sultry, sexy, and manipulative villain, she's the main bad guy of the group, just behind the Fall Dragon himself, even managing to manipulate his daughter into doing evil deeds without her knowing. Her outfit design is perfect to show off the menacing aura, and bonus skills for including the time-tested dark skin and white hair design, because everybody knows that skin and white hair is guilt. The other bad guys you meet along your journey are very uniquely evil. Marnie is an evil bitch throughout the entire game, and she makes you want to strangle the fuck out of this tiny little brat of a girl. I love it. I miss it in video games where the bad guy is actually the bad guy and does bad things. She does change her tone at the end of the game where she realizes that Vale has a tragic backstory, but this is crafted very well for her growth. Way better than Hortensia, in fact. After loss upon loss, she is desperate to please Zephyr and the Fell Dragon, and it makes sense that her extreme lengths of bitchiness can reflect on that. But after some character development and backstory, she actually grows and understands what she's done wrong. It's a shame we don't actually get to recruit her in the party member, mostly because... I did tell you about that spoiler warning, didn't I? Onto a character with growth and into a one-dimensional character, Gris, who I still find entertaining as hell. He enjoys the pain and suffering of others and the pain and suffering of himself as well, and it's all too entertaining to watch. As for our last hound, Mavier, he's the weakest out of the four, so God knows why this guy, for as honorable and valiant as he is part of the main bad guys, let alone the Fantastic Four. He's there to be patriotic to his country, and his connection to Vale certainly gives him the motivation to serve as the Four Hounds, but his growth as a character only leads to making Vale a more entertaining character. It also sucks that Mavier is the one that we get to recruit instead of Marnie. Well, because... I swear, I feel like those two should have swapped roles. Actually, recruiting him is kind of a benefit. He's actually one of the better units in the game. I'm not going to talk too much about the Fell Dragon himself. He's evil with no growth. He is super one-dimensional. Big, bad, evil man. His daughter, Vale, on the other hand, she's a lot more cleverly written. So she has two different personalities, a kind side and an evil side. Well, that sort of comes with the theme of our character and the engagement rings too. How one has a pure side, but the other has a corruption. Vale as a concept is amazingly written. From the mystery to the reveal, it shows these complicated strings of events into an unfortunate, unforeseeable conflict that you as the player don't know how to deal with. Throughout the game, we meet Vale as a kind-hearted girl, and that's the absolute truth. But then when it was revealed that she was evil and the one responsible for killing your mom, yeah, fuck that bitch. They did an amazing job at wanting the player to kill her. As we continue to the story after the reveal, we do get cutscenes of her acting confused, kind, or even confronting our protagonist with her kind side. Of course, our heroes don't buy that and continue to berate her, even if her good side has no idea what's going on. If I had one tiny criticism, well, more so what I think should have happened in the story, I think the good version of Vale learning about her evil counterpart could have been built up or saved for later, as Zephyr just sort of blurts out the plan right dab in the middle of a monologue, rather than having the player or even our protagonist find out. Just imagine this. We fight her as her evil half, we straight up murder her, and in her dying breath, she turns into the good version, with Colgate here being the last person she sees. Confused about the situation? Bam! That's where Zephyr breaks the news about her other half. I think that would have not only made for a better reveal, but it makes the drama more traumatic as we killed someone who was oblivious to the situation. Call me a fanfiction writer, that still doesn't change my opinion on Vale as a character. She is amazingly well written. So, to summarize Fire Emblem Engage, it's a Fire Emblem game. If you're a Fire Emblem fan, you probably already bought it. If you're not a Fire Emblem fan, it depends if you're a Tactics fan. And if you're not a Tactics fan or a Fire Emblem fan...
You know what video you're watching, right?
As a Fire Emblem fan myself, I'm satisfied enough of what I got. The story itself can be pretty predictable and not every character hits it for me. The twins can get pretty irritating, Anna sounds way more annoying than her previous games, but the game still has the same Fire Emblem charms from the character designs and game designs. The only major criticism I could give the game is its localization. If they plan on changing the dialogue, they should have been more entertaining. Otherwise, they should have just kept the original what the Japanese scriptwriters would have said. Personally, if I had to rank this Fire Emblem game towards its predecessors, I have to be honest, I think I like Three Houses more. Although comparing Three Houses is extremely unfair, Three Houses was a phenomenal game. 3 different fully fledged campaigns and multiple different endings, and a 4th scenario as DLC. It honestly ranks up there as one of my favorite Fire Emblem games of all time. Engage, on the other hand, feels more like a Fates or a Radiant Dawn. Amazing games to still play through, but not the same masterpieces like the likes of Blazing Sword or Awakening.
I could go on and on about the experience I had with the Fire Emblem series. but I feel like that's a discussion for another video. With that being said, my final verdict for Fire Emblem Engage is a 4 out of 6.
More accurately, a 40 out of 60. This is how I want my rating system to work. Since the game is $60 at launch, I think it's accurate to label the quality of the game towards its price. Of course, if you want me to assign a proper number like every other basic review out there, well, if we do some math and divide 40 with 10 and... Okay, the game's not that bad. 6 out of 10 seems too harsh for the game. Personally, I'm more of an 8 out of 10. The only thing really weighing it down for me is its poor localization. Otherwise, the level design is top-notch, even harkening back to previous Fire Emblem locales, and I still had an overall fun experience with the game. If you could get this game on a sale, I definitely say go for it.
Not like it matters anyways. Nintendo games will never go on sale unless it's 5 years from now. Get this while you still can, because by 10 years or more so, when supply-demand takes a toll, this baby's gonna be way more.
I mean, I guess there's also emulation. As a consumer, I can understand that $60 price tag can be too steep, so emulation is the only option. But as a Fire Emblem fan, I can't stop you from stepping into that territory. Just know that by doing so, you'll make an Asian boy really sad.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this conditioner I got. I wonder if... So it turns out, that wasn't actually conditioner, it was toothpaste. I got brain surgery in 3 days.